When two mountains fight, the sky mourns.
Wow, an interesting title for a short story.
Yes, it is a story of two brothers who found themselves on opposite sides of the cattle rustling war in Karamoja.
While it is a fictional short story and any similarities to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental, it still touches on serious issues of what life was like in Karamoja when insecurity restarted in 2019.
Yes, the authors captured the nuances of Karamojang raiding culture and the dangers to society.
Well, this is just part one, which we'll be reading together, and I can't wait for part two.
Marble City, Moroto District, July 25th, 2019, 6:30 p.m. As the hot Karamojang sun begins to slowly drags itself across the horizon and the cool breeze from Mount Moroto creeps its way into the town, the inhabitants of this small but strategically important part of the country do not yet know that tonight the mountain will cry and the district will never be the same again. Red amber marble trucks filled to the brim with freshly dug, glistening white marble make their final preparations on the outskirts of the town before beginning the long journey to Tororo and Jinja. The swarms of local government and NGO workers move crisscross the roads in Camp Swahili and Leah Street, stopping at grocery stores or fast food vendors on their way home after a long and seemingly uneventful day. Amidst the whizzing Bora Boras and white NGO Land Cruisers returning from various fieldwork visits, green patrol pickups belonging to the UPDF 3rd Division, one by one, roll out of the headquarters to various undisclosed security installations. The unmistakable sound of their turbocharged V6 diesel engines adds to the symphony of the town. Since the silencing of the gun, 2011, after a grueling 10-year struggle, Karamoja had enjoyed relative peace. Investors were beginning to dip their toes into the region, commercial tour operators were thriving, and household incomes were rising thanks to various government and NGO programs. Sadly, since March 2019, what started as low-intensity tit-for-tat raids between armed members of the GA and Turkana communities had spiraled into a region-wide free-for-all across the 9 districts of Karamoja. Communities across the region began to rearm, and inter- and intra-district raids were a common occurrence. Raiding gangs of armed youth, locally known as Karachuna, were pillaging defenseless communities mercilessly and in large numbers. Their latest strategy was to mobilize 100 to 300 men and boys, split up into groups of 20, and attack multiple locations in a district overnight. This strategy was aimed at overwhelming the security services' ability to respond to all threats and ensure that they escape with as many cows and livestock as possible. For a while, this seemed to be working, until the security limited their exposure by driving all cows in various sub-counties into fortified protected corrals. The idea was that local communities would send their livestock and shepherds to the protected corrals, where military garrisons armed with heavy machine guns, armored vehicles, and entrenched defensive positions would guard the cows overnight, thus making it more difficult for the raiders to make off with the wealth of entire sub-counties. While this made strategic sense, as it ensured forces could concentrate around hard points as opposed to guarding numerous soft targets, it meant that hundreds, sometimes thousands of cows from entire sub-counties were all gathered together, making them a lucrative target for large raiding gangs. The Karamojang did not save their wealth in banks or have pension programs such as NSSF, National Social Security Fund. They relied on cattle for wealth, and these protected corrals could be referred to as bank vaults guarded by the Ugandan army.
Nadengat Protected Corral, Nadengat Sub-County Moroto District, Simba Company Area of Operation, 8 p.m., 2000 hours. Simba Company had around 120 men and had spent the better part of the last month guarding the corral. In the morning, the shepherds would come and take the animals for grazing, and in the evenings they would be returned. Records would be kept, though of course one or two would occasionally disappear from the herds as the young soldiers would roast them, or they may have died from diseases without vets. No one knows for sure what would happen, though it would be understandable that those risking their lives for these cows may occasionally want to partake of the meaty delicacy of Karamoja cattle. Even banks charge security fees. At just 19 years old, the young private John Lokwang sat silently, gazing into the night from his defensive position. Without any smoke pollution, the sky above him was an absolute sight to behold, millions of stars dotting the view, each like a sparkling diamond in the crown of the heavens. He thought about his young wife at home and his son. It would be 2 more weeks till he gets leave to visit them in his hometown of Kangole and Napak district. John had always excelled in school, being top sciences in the district, but when time came to progress after his O-level, he failed to get a sponsor. Nevertheless, as a child who grew up in the first disarmament, something about the army had fascinated him. Whether it was the matching uniforms or the sense of purpose and respect soldiers had, we don't know. When the opportunity for recruitment came in 2018, he enlisted, progressing well in every phase of training. Next to him in the dugout was the ever-jolly Private Isa Sitimba, a cheerful young heavy machine gunner from Mubende. The two had established a bond since the deployment began in March. They had seen heavy fighting in Gobe, Nakiloro, and Narengenya. Far from his home, John became his official guide/buddy. However, the two behaved more like brothers. Wherever Isa was, John was not far away and vice versa. The pair, though young, had seen more combat in 4 months than most human beings will see in a lifetime, surviving ambushes, bullets, and thorns, snakes and wild animals together. Isa broke the silence. "John, Mposi, what was the name of that meat which your madam brought us frosty the other day?" "It is called akuring." "How do they make it?" "It is beef which is dried and then fried in its own fat, no cooking oil, and it can stay for months without a refrigerator. Your madam and my madam should open a restaurant in Kampala, because that meat will go well with binyibwa, peanut sauce, and akalo, millet flour." John chuckled. Kampala was an urban wilderness for most Karamojang. He himself had never spent more than a week in the nation's capital. As a child growing up, he remembers sitting around the fireplace in the Ere homestead, while an uncle who had returned from the city explained in great detail his trip. He had bought the family some secondhand clothes and toys. He paused in thought for a brief moment, then replied with a tinge of realism, "Maybe one day, God willing, day, my brother. For now, we must first survive this deployment."
Karachuna Warrior Raiding Party, Lotisan, Nadunget Border Area, 10:24 p.m., 2200 hours. In the silence and cool of the night, a raiding party of 75 youth slowly and quietly creep through the bushes just a few kilometers from Simba Company. They paused in a dry riverbed to discuss their attack plan. The journey from Napak to Moroto was only 14 kilometers. However, this raiding group took the longer route through Lotisan sub-county to make it appear that they were raiding from Kotiro. In the morning, when the security was tracking footprints, it would appear the cows went to Kotiro and not Napak. This would buy the raiding group a few hours, which they would use to sell the cows to traders from Bale and Soroti, who were waiting at the main road in Lope with their cattle trucks. Cattle rustling in Karamoja was becoming heavily commercialized, with a small minority of local leaders, community members, businessmen, and even security personnel or their wives participating in the billion-shilling industry. "Okay, this is it," the group leader whispered. 3 teams of 25. Team 1 will follow this riverbed until the airstrip and attack from the left. Team 2 will attack from the right side along the main road, and Team 3 with me will attack from the bush. After the raid, Follow the stars and regroup at this point before we make the journey back home. Boy Boy and local Tilling, take your teams. Just as the leader finished, they opened boxes of alcohol and passed out sachets of crudely brewed wargi. The sound of bitter, deep exhales as the large bandit group drank their bitter brew. It was standard operating procedure for the bandits to take alcohol before a raid. It's just a scary thing, and for some of them, it is their first or second raid, so many were afraid. For Joseph Local Wong, the alcohol did not help calm his nerves. His stomach twisted and turned and churned inside. It was his first ever raid, and he was crippled with anxiety. What am I doing here? He thought to himself.
What if I am injured or am arrested? Kaakuj, dear God, please help me to stay alive and I will never go for another raid again. He prayed silently. As a teenager, he was famous in the pack as a long-distance runner and was one time scouted by Europeans who wanted to take him abroad as a marathon runner. Sadly, he failed to secure travel documents in time, and his sponsors went back to Europe after their contract at the UN ended. He was recruited into raiding by his age mates, who used to drink in the evenings in town. They used to buy drinks for everyone, and despite being young, had 2 or 3 wives. Meanwhile, Joseph was relying on whatever his brother John would share with him from his salary as a soldier. Unbeknownst to him, today, both him and his brother would meet each other, not as friends, but as enemies.
Well, that is the end of part 1. Let us know what you think about it.
The fictional short story was written by the Karamoja Trumpet team. You can find them on their YouTube channel, Karamoja Trumpet TV.
Or visit their website, Karamoja Trumpet. It is a small part of a new project by the Africa Leadership Institute at AFLIUG, aimed at using media, art, and culture to ensure conflict transformation, peace, and development in Karamoja sub-region.
I'm excited for part 2 to find out how this story ends.
Me too.